So, it's been a couple or a few days since we had talked about sponges. So, again, give me some characteristics of a sponge. Yeah, they don't have a muscular system or nervous system. Yeah, that's a big one we want to know is that they're sessile. They have an osculum. Those are the three big aspects to know. They're filter feeders, they have an osculum, they're sessile. Therefore, placing them in which phylum then? Porifera. That's right. Okay. Then, as we move on to natural selection or evolution, if you want to call it that, there's different ways that we categorize and study that. So, who's maybe the first, I don't know if you want to call it scientists, that perhaps tried to classify animals? We said that yesterday, I believe. He's a Greek scientist. We said he tried to categorize animals that swim, that run, and fly. And we know that's not the case. Well, that is, but there's a little more that goes into it than that. Aristotle had done that because as we move on, as far as taxonomy goes and evolution, Aristotle had started it, and it was Darwin that took it an extra mile, if you want to call it that. Okay, and he's more noted for his finches. Okay, that's probably the most common, I want to say, application as far as what we call evolution is known for. Okay, so when we talked about this yesterday, the concept of Pangea, we had mentioned that actually Antarctica used to have a tropical climate to it when we had one large landmass. But what happens typically when animals become isolated, okay, that means they probably had a common ancestor, and that's what this is referring to right here, okay? With this, they're similar to a landmass off of the coast of South America, I believe, is where Darwin had made his voyages. And then notice these animals, the tortoise, the iguana, but mainly the finch, okay? And what happens is there's going to be a competition for food sources, and that's what we're going to get into here in just a couple of minutes, okay? I do believe everyone's perception or idea of what a big cat would be might change from one individual to another. Now, scientifically, I believe you look at it, those that purr and then those that roar, okay? Then there's, I want to say about 5 species that are known for being the big cats. Of course, there's leopards, snow leopards, your tigers, your jaguars, and then your lions. I think that's all five. Okay, because in in their throat structure, they've got cartilage in there, I think, and then when they exhale air, they'll actually roar. And then if it's cartilage, then instead, then they, or excuse me, bone tissue, then they actually purr. When, of course, anyone who picks up a domestic cat, more often than not, you're petting them, and they start purring. Okay. So anyone who would agree, obviously, that's not a big cat. The reason I state it that way is, notice we didn't include cheetahs in that category of big cats. Now, again, everyone's perception of what a big cat might be different, but the reason I bring up the cheetah is it's not so much that it had undergone products of evolution from migrating from an island, but when it comes to, if you want to call it cheetah behavior or their hunting habits, okay, it's a lot like others of the cats, but why do they have a problem, a bigger problem with bringing down prey items as opposed to other examples that you might consider the big cats? It's one of the things we wanted you to explain as sophomores when you took biology. It was one of the products of evolution. It has something to do with their feet. But because what is the cheetah known for? For speed. So when you are a track person, okay, all right, Alec, I'm picking on you, okay? If you're running in a race, okay, I don't picture you having these on your feet. Your shoes, yes, I get that. Say that again. Track spikes. Do you have spikes? Why don't you have any track spikes? You got some throwing shoes, but no spikes. Okay, well, we're getting closer on account of what it is we're trying to get at. Because why do people wear spikes in track? More traction, more grip, makes them faster. That's right. Okay? So one of the aspects that we're getting at is what's true about the paws on these animals. They got these spikes, but how's it different than all the other species of cats? In other words, what does it mean to, what do I want to say? You send something out, you bring it back in. Yeah, it can't retract. Those claws are out there. They're permanent. They're kind of, again, like spikes. They don't go out. They don't come in. The coming in is not the problem. The going out is the problem. So if they don't go out any further than what they already are, what problem do they have with trying to bring down their prey item? It's probably tough to do what on their neck, maybe, to actually grab on, hold it, and keep a fairly good grip, where a lot of the other species of cats then can get them claws out, and once they're in, they're probably dug in pretty good. Okay, so it's going to be an advantage, yes, structurally and physiologically speaking, to have those types of claws, but yet there can be a downside to that. But it makes them very successful, because when it comes to speed, that's always going to be an advantage for yourself. So, somewhere along the evolutionary line, there were types of animals in the cat family, or feline family, that for some reason their claws were non-retractable anymore. So, what happened is that type of population became more successful, and it doesn't mean that other species of cats died off. It just meant that they could specialize in that type of prey hunting or hunting habits. Okay, so that's what we're getting at when it comes to evolution. It's something that probably deals with either their habitat or their food source. That's going to be probably the major driving action for any animal when it comes to evolution. So Darwin had made note of that, and he recorded them. And he noted, okay, so an adaptation is something, a favorable trait, whether it's the paws of the cat. There are certain species of birds that the only thing they eat is snails. Okay? I think apple snails is a species of that. Is it going to be an advantage to be a specialist? Probably. But what can also be the problem with being a hunting specialist, do you think? We kind of talked about this with the coyotes and the foxes when it comes to rabbits. If the population declines in rabbits, because there's too many foxes, too many coyotes around, so the population of rabbits plummets. Okay? What can possibly happen to these coyotes and foxes then? They could possibly die off because there's not enough to eat. So when it comes to being a specialist, yes, that's an advantage because you don't have to worry about what anybody else is eating. You have your own specialty. But the problem with that is, if your prey item disappears, your major food source, you're in trouble. Okay? And some species of animals, they just cannot adapt that quickly. And throughout geological time, there's lots of examples for that. I'm kind of sad that the Meg is not coming to Del Rapids. Okay, which, does anyone know what the Meg is short for? Yeah, Megalodon. It was a species of shark that had died out. Why? Why do you think the Megalodon died out? Pretty soon, if your food source disappears, you're going to be able to hang on for just a little bit longer until all of a sudden not you people, but until their own bodies, their metabolism was no longer supported by a food source. So eventually, I think as any type of animal is just going to become weaker and weaker and weaker until they can no longer support all their metabolic activities inside their body, and they die off. Okay. Even when it came to talking about sharks in this class the last few years, I was always under the perception that, we don't know what's down, let's say, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet below the surface of the water. Who knows what's down there? I think maybe you had heard of examples. I think the coelacanth was one of them. It's a species of fish that was thought to have died out a long time ago. But what happened is some fishermen had caught one. They didn't know what it was, and that's a coelacanth. And until watching Shark Week, when they had a special, because they're trying to promote the movie, the Meg, and they're talking about megalodons, and they're asking the experts and saying, so do you think megalodons still exist? And they go, no. And I thought, oh geez, I've been teaching that wrong for quite a while. And so since I was teaching the idea that we don't know what's down there, why are experts probably saying they're long gone and you don't have to worry about them? Because what's their food source probably going to be? Whales, okay? And is there enough whales there's probably enough whales to support a population of, let's say, maybe 100. I guess I really don't know. But there isn't enough big prey items to support a viable population of megalodons. It would be kind of neat to see. Well, yeah, I'm sure, but I think that would obviously be very scary. If you've seen the previews of that, they show the the underwater research lab, and it's a little girl about like this, maybe. In the previous, there's a monster out there, and yeah, there's a animal tried to bite through the plexiglass or whatever type of structure that was. So anyway, so if organisms, they're constructed to meet the demands of their environments, and that will continue as long as you can do that with a food source and probably with their habitat. So again, Darwin made a note of that, and I want to go through these two observations, okay? And then we'll continue with that tomorrow. I have another activity or something I want to show on the overhead. So in this example, for instance, what is a clutch size? Anyone, when you're talking about reptiles or birds, what is a clutch? Do you perhaps know? Okay, it's the number of eggs that are placed by the female. Number of potential offspring placed by the female. That would be a clutch size, okay? So what we see happening, I think everyone would agree that when it comes to different forms of reproduction, then as far as when it comes to the sexual reproduction of many animals, the number of sperm cells that are released, of course, is probably in the millions. Okay, so there's going to be a large number of gametes produced. No one would argue with that. But when it comes to especially that of reptiles, what do you suppose is happening besides environmental conditions? Now we're talking about reptiles now, especially crocodiles and alligators. Why if there's 50 being produced in a clutch, why are not all the offspring surviving to reproduce, do you think? Because it might be their environmental conditions, yes, it might be their food source, but it has something to do that they're going to do what? Well, that's true, but it's a type of behavior that we don't go into. And what I mean is, what do maybe some crocodiles do to smaller crocodiles? They eat them, okay? So not only is it a food source or environmental conditions, some of them offspring are not surviving long enough because they eat each other, okay? And then when we look at this observation too, okay, now whether it's the snail example we gave or that of the whales, when those populations fluctuate, it's going to have an effect on whatever's preying upon that. I think Smilodont is another name. It's a type of big cat with big teeth that stick out. Say that again? Thought I heard it. Something tooth. Yeah, saber tooth. There's known as a Smilodont. That's right. Okay? And we theorize that they disappeared because the climate had shifted and there was no cover for them. Because we know when it comes to hunting, hunting behaviors, lions hunt how? In a what? In a group, in a pride. So their close cousins, the tiger, that's totally different because they lead what type of lives? Solitary lives. So they're off on their own. So there's going to be advantages in both cases, but if a tiger does not have cover, it's probably going to be tougher for them to gain their food source. Okay, so we went through the first two observations. We'll begin with observation 3 tomorrow, but as far as what we consider natural selection, evolution, the best way and most common example is going to be that of the size of an animal, and that's what this deals with then. Okay. So again, terms for Chapter 1 will be evaluated on them on Friday.